The T-Wolves are in an interesting situation. A young team led by Karl Anthony Towns, who seems like he's the second coming of God in the form of basketball, and he's only like 21 years old. There's Andrew Wiggins, who seems like he can be really good, but his all-around game has not caught up to his scoring ability, and he's like in his third season in the NBA now. And I'm sure we would all agree that these two are the building blocks of this whole entire franchise. The question is, do they have the right players around them? I mean, we should start with the head coach, Tom Thibodeau. I think Tibbs is going to get these guys playing defense. I mean, even if you get a head coach who knows what he's doing on that side of the floor, it's tough to play defense in the NBA. And these are not the Joakim Noah, Luol Deng, Chicago Bulls that Thibodeau's dealing with. These are some young kids, and the NBA's tough. Simple as that. So I think they can be a defensive team eventually. Hopefully they take a step up next season, but I also think they can make some acquisitions to also help that out. In my opinion, they don't have the ideal talent around these two. We can start with, we can really start with Zach LaVine, who's like the other guy. I mean, he's also 21 years old, and he's a very good scorer. He can create his own shot. He's athletic as hell. And he's really been like a good three-point shooter and all that. The thing is, and I mean, I talked about this maybe like a week ago or something, I don't know if he fits with Wiggins and Towns. Because even though he's talented, he's also a guy who's going to be looking for his own shot, and he's not really a playmaker. Which means that between LaVine, Wiggins, and Towns, there's not one guy who's like a big assist dude. I feel like this team drew a lot of comparisons to the Oklahoma City Thunder when they were young and it was like Durant and Westbrook and Harden. What we don't remember is, between those three, Westbrook averaged like 8 assists a game his second season, and James Harden averaged like 5 a game coming off the bench. Neither LaVine or Wiggins or Towns are doing that. Which means you need an actual playmaker on the roster, and that playmaker has been Ricky Rubio for the past like a month or so. And unfortunately, Zach LaVine got hurt, and we don't want to see that. But one thing that happened because of it was that Rubio was getting the ball more, and that nullifies some of his lack of shooting because the ball's just in his hands and he can run pick and rolls and attack and transition and all that. And he's been really damn good in this month of March. So I mean, if trading Zach LaVine is going to make that happen, then cool. Or Wiggins or LaVine are just going to become like just better assist guys, which maybe they could do, but I don't know about that one. And then trading LaVine could also lead you to getting a shooting guard who can provide spacing and defense, as well as a power forward who can do the same thing. Because, in my opinion, like Gorgui Dieng is a nice player, I don't know if he's the ideal big man next to Towns. Part of me believes that having a shooting 4 next to him and then having Towns play center all the time would just be better. Because Dieng doesn't provide like that much spacing. I mean, sure, he can hit some mid-range jumpers and he shot well from 3 while taking less than 1 a game, but I don't think it's ideal. I think if you could get a guy like Serge Ibaka, not Serge Ibaka exactly because he's a little too old for these guys, but someone like that at the 4 spot next to Towns, I think that would be better because the spacing would be better. You'd have a guy who's just better at like defending around the perimeter, and I mean, I think it would just be more ideal for this team. And if trading Zach LaVine is the way to do that, then yeah, I would definitely think about it. But yeah, I do think the two positions that they could improve on, shooting guard and power forward with shooting and defense at both of them. But I do think there are ways of filling those spots out without necessarily trading for someone. One of which is you have your draft pick this year. And I would definitely look for a guy at either one of those positions. Of course, I'm not an NBA scout, and I don't pay attention to college basketball, so I don't know potential names, but I'm sure there's some guys out there. But then there's also free agency, where these guys do have quite a bit of cap space. They're going to be at $79 million at this offseason, and the only guy on the roster who you think about re-signing, to me, is Shabazz Muhammad. Or it's Shabazz, one of those two. I've heard both, but he's the one guy. But even then, I mean, he's a ball-dominant player who loves to shoot and doesn't like to pass. So, I mean, if you let him go, I don't think you'd be crying about it. The one dude at the shooting guard position who's a free agent this season who could be interesting with these guys is JJ Redick. Very good three-point shooter, one of the best in the league. Defensively, he's decent. He doesn't really mess up much. He knows how to defend within a team system, and he's got Tom Thibodeau to run that system, so I like him a lot for this team. Only question is he's like 32 years old. Is that a little too old for this T-Wolves roster? I do think he can age gracefully just because, like, it's not like he's relying on athleticism, but even then, it might be a little too much. Then if we look at the power forward position, there is Ersan Ilyasova. Could be the floor spacer. I don't know how good of a defender he can be. At his very height, he was actually a pretty solid defensive player for Milwaukee, but that's kind of been a little inconsistent for him nowadays. The other one's Patrick Patterson, who I never shut up about. His impact is still felt, but he's shooting very poorly from the field overall this season, even if the threes are going in. I don't know. There's no, like, perfect 23-year-old free agent who can play both sides of the floor for these guys, which makes sense, because there's no way a guy like that is hitting free agency. I think your best bet is the draft, and maybe you can get creative with a trade. It's just, besides LaVine, there's not a lot of trade assets on this team, which is why, I've already made my point about LaVine. If there's a good move for that guy for a floor spacer and all that, you make the move, in my opinion. But now, like, we can talk about Wiggins and Towns some more. The question with Towns is just when's the defense going to come around? And I think he has potential to be a fantastic defensive player, just given how well he can move, given his size. He also grabs about almost 4 offensive rebounds a game, which shows, like, he's definitely down to hustle and play hard and all that good stuff that makes you feel good. So I think he's definitely got chances of being good on defense, but I mentioned before, I really want him to be at the center position exclusively and not have a guy like Gorgui Dieng next to him, because I want Towns defending the other team's center, because I think he can make more of an impact defensively, always hanging around the rim, rather than chasing power forwards along the perimeter in 2017 NBA and beyond. So that's my one thing with Towns. Wiggins is a little more interesting. He's an awesome scorer, and the three-point shot has come around this season, shooting 36%. And I like that he gets to the free throw line about 6.5 times a game. But his all-around game as of right now, 3rd season in the league, it just hasn't caught up to his scoring. 2.5 assists per game for a guy who has the ball in his hand a decent amount of the time. Only grabs 4 rebounds, even though he's an athletic freak. Not much of a defensive player. It's weird. It's weird. You look at Wiggins and you look at the ability and you're just like, there's no way all you're going to be is Kevin Martin. You have to be more than that. And all we have to do is just hope that he develops other abilities. Like, I don't know, it's his 3rd season. I figured he'd be more of a playmaker and all that by now. Maybe Thibodeau needs to yell at him more. I really don't know, but Wiggins just needs to be flat out better, is the only way to put it. But when you have a 21-year-old who puts up 23 points a game efficiently and is an athletic freak, I'm willing to bet he's still going to be really good. So I think that's it. I don't really feel like summing up the entire video. I will add one little tidbit. Even if you can't get like a big difference maker in free agency, I think just getting like 3 or 4 solid bench players would benefit these guys a lot, because their second unit isn't exactly setting the world on fire. Chris Dunn at 22 years old. Not the best rookie season from him offensively. Defensively, he showed some good signs. Tyus Jones, maybe he just needs more minutes, but he wasn't doing too much for them. But he only played like 12 minutes a game, so I think some solid bench guys would do these guys some good. So maybe they could do that with their cap space, and I wouldn't fault them for it at all. But yeah, whatever I said in this video, just imagine I'm saying it now to sum it all up in 10 seconds.